It happened unexpectedly, like a sudden downpour on a clear day. We were sitting in the kitchen, I was drinking tea, she was fidgeting with an empty mug like she couldn't bring herself to speak. Then she finally said it. Quietly, calmly, almost casually. I don't love you anymore. I think I'm tired. I can't do this. I didn't understand at first. I asked. Is this just a fight? Or are you serious? She wouldn't look at me. She said she needed new emotions. That life had become too predictable. Too stable. I listened in silence. Processing. An hour later, she started packing. I sat on the couch, more like a bystander than a participant. She took a suitcase, a bag of documents, a box of books. She glanced at the photo shelf but didn't take a single picture. Told me not to call. And left. All of that in a single evening. 6 years, just over, like that. No drama. No tears. Just I'm leaving. I remember closing the door and sitting in the kitchen. The tea had gone cold. The dishes in the sink felt foreign. I didn't know what to do, not because I was in pain, but because I felt empty. The next morning, I woke up to complete silence. No running water, no blow dryer, no coffee brewing. No footsteps, no perfume, no usual nagging about leaving a charger on the floor. I went to work like usual. Colleagues asked, "How's it going?" I nodded. Nobody noticed that I no longer lived with someone. Even I didn't fully realize it at first. The first few days felt like a numbed injection, something had happened, but the sting hadn't reached me yet. In the evenings, I'd look at her empty chair at the dinner table. At the cup she hadn't taken. At the book she'd left behind, still open, as if waiting for her. But everything was lifeless. I didn't touch the blanket she'd left on the couch. Didn't wash the towel hanging in the bathroom. I just waited for these little things to fade from memory on their own. A week later, I stumbled across her social media. New status. New photo. And surprisingly, there was a man in the picture. I didn't know him. But I realized, that's him. The new guy she never really mentioned. It felt weird. Not because I had hoped she'd come back, but because I understood it wasn't about exhaustion or emotions. There had been someone else. And I had simply become unnecessary. I didn't throw a fit. Didn't send angry messages. Didn't call her friends. I just muted all shared group chats. Took down the grocery list from the fridge. Tossed the dried flowers she had hung in the bathroom. And started living by a new routine, alone. Friends tried to get me out sometimes. I agreed, more out of politeness than desire. It was easier to sip coffee at a table with someone else than eat in silence again. But I didn't share what had happened. Just said, we broke up. Nobody pried. Maybe they could tell by my face. Evenings were different now. I read more. Watched the shows she didn't like. Cooked things I'd once considered too simple for two. Sometimes I ate mac and cheese 3 days in a row because I could. Played music louder. Fell asleep to podcasts. No one complained. I wasn't suffering. But I wasn't happy either. I was just adjusting. Like you adjust to hot summers or icy sidewalks in winter. About a month in, I took off my wedding ring. Not because I wanted to, but because it started to feel uncomfortable, like it was squeezing my finger. I put it in a desk drawer. Didn't throw it out. Just put it away. Just in case. Though, I didn't even know for what. Time passed. 3 months. 4. She didn't call. Didn't write. She had vanished from my life completely. And somehow, that made things easier. No strings pulling me back. No reminders forcing me to dwell. Then came fall, and breathing got easier. Cold air, gray skies, wet sidewalks. Everything outside mirrored how I felt inside. No bright feelings, no pressure. Just quiet. Sometimes sad. But honest. I started returning to my old self, the person I'd been before the relationship. Went through old folders of photos. Pulled down a dusty box of model airplanes from the top shelf. Got back into building them. Carefully picking out parts, reading forums. My mind quieted. I felt like I was making something again, even if it was only in 1 hour 72 minutes scale. Some weekends, I lit some weed. Not because I was desperate, just curious. I'd never tried it before. She never approved, and I didn't care enough to argue. But now, I had the apartment to myself. Nothing was stopping me. And honestly, it wasn't a big deal. Just made things a little softer. Music a little warmer. Nights a little calmer. I didn't spiral. I didn't fall apart. I just let myself loosen the grip. I used to be the guy who always stayed normal. Now I just wanted peace. Sometimes a friend would call me out to a bar. Sometimes I went. Sometimes I didn't. No pressure. I was free, not in a dramatic sense, but in a quiet, everyday way. Nobody asked where I was. Nobody waited for me. And surprisingly, that didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like a pause. And during that pause, I finally felt okay. One day, I realized I barely thought of her anymore. I didn't compare, didn't remember, didn't miss. I was just living. With myself. And I didn't mind the company. About 2 weeks had passed. Everything seemed to have settled. I woke up, went to work, came home, ate something simple, smoked a little, and sat at my desk. The model airplane was slowly coming together, parts drying, paint going unevenly. It was quiet. I barely thought about anything. Not because I had forgotten, but because no thought demanded urgent attention. In the morning, I drank coffee standing up, without turning on the light, listening to morning sounds, the floor creaking upstairs, the trash bin opening in the yard, a cat somewhere downstairs demanding breakfast. In the evening, it was the same route to the store: bread, milk, sometimes frozen pizza, sometimes something random just for variety. I started noticing how much light reflected off the walls in my apartment. We used to always keep the curtains drawn, she liked cozy dimness. Now I left the windows open until late evening, let everything in. Sunlight, street noise, the smell of someone cooking nearby. One night, close to midnight, I was lying on the couch mindlessly scrolling through my feed. Not looking for anything, just a habit. And then a familiar face. A story tag from an old acquaintance. It took a moment to realize it was her different hairstyle, different makeup. But the laugh on her face was the same. In the photo, she was sitting at a bar table. Next to her, a man. His arm around her shoulder. They weren't just acquaintances. This wasn't a random picture. He was looking at her, she at him. It looked natural, like they belonged together. I froze. Not from shock. From a pause inside. Everything became clear in a second. That was the new person she had mentioned. He was already in her life when she packed her suitcase. Maybe even earlier, when she said she was staying at a friend's place or coming home late from a work event. I never checked. And now, I wasn't going to. I didn't feel rage. I didn't want to investigate. I just sat there, feeling something click off inside me. Like the last unanswered question had quietly vanished. The room was dim. I got up, poured some water, looked at my desk, the model in progress, tools neatly laid out. Everything was in its place. Everything was mine. Real. No other voices. No secrets. I set the glass down, wiped my hands on my t-shirt, sat down, and kept painting the tail of the plane. The next day felt the same, but slightly lighter. Like my mind had finally removed the safety screen and left only what mattered: live your life. Do what you want. Watch whatever. Drink your coffee. Go to the store. No one's waiting. No one's lying. Time moved more gently. I stopped counting down to weekends. Started falling asleep without earbuds, sometimes just to the sound of the wind through the window. That was real. And strangely, for the first time in a long while, I felt like everything I noticed had weight. Even the way a blanket falls on your shoulder. Even the rustle of paper as I unpacked a new model kit. Sometimes I thought I could have been in that photo. Sitting beside her. Laughing. But just as quickly, I'd think, why? To walk the same circle again? To be a part of someone else's script? I stopped checking social media. Not as a statement, just because it became irrelevant. There was nothing there for me. Nothing that belonged to my life. I deleted bookmarks, cleared history. Cut it off. A few days later, I visited a hobby shop on the other side of the city. I'd meant to go for weeks. It smelled of wood, paint, and cardboard. The clerk was quiet, didn't hover. I found a rare retro kit, an old fighter plane. Walked outside, took a breath, and suddenly felt light. Almost cheerful. That evening, I played an old record, one with crackle and static. Made tea. Lay on the couch. And just stared at the ceiling. For the first time in ages, I didn't feel empty. I felt space. And in that space, I realized I could live. Nothing was being taken from me. Not anymore. Winter turned out to be mild. Barely any snow. Just drizzle here and there, wind shaking the trees. I found myself enjoying the silence more and more. I kept living in my rhythm, no pressure, no big goals. Just day by day. I worked. I ate. I built models. Sometimes smoked. Sometimes just stared at the ceiling. The past had finally faded. She didn't appear in dreams. Didn't pop into conversations. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't carrying anyone's image around. What was. Now, something else. One day, a friend invited me to a party. I almost said no out of habit. But then thought, why not? It was Saturday. I showed up, grabbed a beer, nodded at people. Music, dim lighting, people talking, laughing. The atmosphere was soft. Warm. Sometime in the middle of the night, one of the guys, an acquaintance of a friend, offered mushrooms. Psychedelics. Said it was just a small amount, mild, just to shift perspective. I didn't pretend to be skeptical. I was curious. And honestly, it felt safe. The dose was minimal. At first, nothing happened. We were just sitting in a carpeted room, ambient music playing, someone telling stories. Then it hit, gently. A sense of calm. Like something in me finally let go. Ordinary things, a blanket, a mug, the wallpaper pattern, suddenly felt vivid. Not literally alive, but full. Present. I sat on the floor and realized how much tension I'd been carrying without knowing it. No heavy thoughts. No regrets. No anxiety. Just one simple feeling, you're here. You're alive. And that's enough. Later we went outside. The cold nipped at our faces, the sky was black and clear. The wind felt almost intelligent. I walked among people I barely knew and didn't feel alone. Not part of the group, just a being among others. Whole. Balanced. The next morning, no crash. Just a bit tired, a little amazed. I looked in the mirror and, for the first time in a while, thought, you look okay. A few days later, I ran into that same guy, his name was Alexei, at a coffee shop. He asked what I did for work. Told me his company was urgently looking for a designer. Not for marketing flyers, but for proper systems, interfaces, internal tools, stable tech. The salary? Nearly double mine. I was a little taken aback. He said, I can connect you with the manager. They want calm, sane people. Not geniuses. Just people who get things done. I agreed. Didn't expect much. Just thought, why not? A week later I did the interview. Then a small test assignment. Everything felt easy. The team seemed normal. Polite. No egos. 2 weeks later, I was signing papers. My first paycheck surprised me, I didn't even know what to spend it on. Bought a good chair. New headphones. Scheduled a session with an osteopath. That's it. Work didn't become my life's purpose, it just took its place. I got up, did my job, came home. In the evenings, tea, music, books. Or just silence. I started smiling more. For no reason. Just because it felt light. I didn't look for new relationships. Didn't open up to the world. I just lived. Honestly. Without chasing anything. Without trying to prove something to the past. And strangely, that finally felt like real freedom. Then this happened. It happened on a regular street, during a regular evening. I was walking home from work, dinner in a paper bag, nothing unusual. On the corner near a bakery, I saw them, a guy and a girl. Young, maybe early 20s. He was holding her face gently, she was smiling. They looked like a toothpaste ad, soft, close, simple. I didn't get why I stopped. My feet just paused. My eyes locked on them. They kissed lightly, naturally, like the world was spinning just for that moment. And suddenly something inside me twitched. Fast. Sharp. Anger flared up, small but bright, like a spark from static electricity. Illogical, dumb, but real. I felt my fists clench. I wanted to shout, enough. I wanted to bark, go home. Or even mutter something rude as I passed. Not because they did anything wrong. But because they had something, and I didn't. Because I'd spent months scraping all this out of myself, and they were just standing there, breathing each other in. I turned and walked fast, close to the walls. My heart thumped. Like someone had shoved an old photo in my face and whispered, "Look, you had this. And now you don't." When I got home, I dropped my coat on the floor, sat down, and stared at the wall. Not because of them. Because of me. Because it turned out, somewhere deep down, I hadn't let go completely. It had been exactly a year. Not to the day, not by the calendar, but by feel. I didn't think about the anniversary anymore. At some point, it stopped mattering. Life had moved on without highs or drama. Steady, like a tram on its route. I woke up early, not because I had to, just out of habit. Made coffee, opened my laptop, checked the day's tasks. Outside, it was gray, somewhere between autumn and winter. Puddles with leaves underfoot, the air cool but not harsh. The apartment was quiet. I could hear a faint electric crackle from the hallway light. My phone blinked. Just a normal ping. I glanced at the screen and froze. A message. From her. "Hey. I don't know if I should be writing, but I just wanted to know how you're doing." No name. No context. Just a neutral line. As if we hadn't broken up for real, just took a 1-week break. I stared at the screen, then put the phone down. Got up and walked to the window. Outside, someone was shouting "Courier," someone else slammed a car trunk. The world moved on. Inside, something stirred. Over the year, I'd built a small, stable inner world. It wasn't fancy or exciting, but it worked. Mornings started with coffee, days with design work, evenings with music and model kits. I had quiet friends, a few group chats, the occasional gathering. Everything breathed. And now, her message. Out of nowhere. With no reason. No follow-up. I went back to the phone, read it again. It felt like she'd sent it out of boredom. Or just to confirm I was still around. Maybe she was testing the waters, or maybe things with the new guy hadn't worked out and she was poking the past. That made me feel gross. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, leaned on the windowsill. My head was spinning with half-formed responses, none of them right. I didn't know if I wanted to reply. I didn't even know if I was angry. But I could feel something warm and sticky rising, irritation. An hour passed in silence. I put the phone in a drawer and went outside. Not for groceries. Just to walk it off. I walked past shops without seeing them. People were chatting on phones, sipping coffee, business as usual. But I was boiling. Not because she messaged, but because I realized I still hadn't fully let go. I'd worked, built, processed, and she just popped up like a notification. Back at my building, I stopped. And then, a wild, messy, stupid thought hit me. But it was clear. I took out my phone and found a chat with her friend, the one who always looked at me a little too long. We'd never crossed a line, but there had been tension. A moment in a kitchen once, late night, that was a little warmer than it should have been. We ignored it then. I typed. "Hey. This isn't random. I've always thought you were beautiful. Want to meet up?" No strings. Sent it. Regretted it. Not because I didn't mean it, but because it was too raw. 15 minutes passed. Her reply. "Are you serious? Or is this just because of someone else?" I answered honestly. "Yeah, I'm pissed. But I've always liked you. That's real." Short pause. Then. "Okay. Come over. I'm home." I got in a cab, staring out the window at rain and lights. I wasn't thinking. No expectations. No plan. She opened the door wearing a t-shirt and soft eyes. We didn't talk much. We just were. In the same space, with mutual tension, shared frustration, and quiet understanding. It happened quickly. But not crudely. No drama. Just two people meeting in a moment of vulnerability. Afterward, we drank tea in silence. No questions. No weirdness. In the morning, I left early. She was still asleep. I walked 2 stops home. Inside, I didn't feel proud. Didn't feel ashamed. Just empty in a clean way. Like something had been shaken loose. Like the final valve had clicked shut. I got home, turned on music, sat at my desk, and opened a new model kit, a frigate. On the instructions was a picture of a ship in a storm. I ran my finger across the paper. And in my head, just one thought. The storm's already behind me. I never replied. Not out of anger. Not as a statement. Just because I didn't feel any connection anymore. It was like getting a letter from an old movie character, someone you stopped watching long ago. You glance at it, shrug, and move on. There was no hesitation. I didn't draft responses in my head. I didn't wonder what if. I just knew there was no need. Not because of resentment. But because it was over. Completely. A couple of weeks went by. Regular days, work, groceries, evening walks. I kept working on the frigate, the one with the storm on the box. Progress was slow, but careful. Sometimes I paused, looked at the tiny pieces, put on music, and just sat. Everything around me felt simple. Real. Then, another message. From a different number. No name, but I knew instantly. Hey! I know I don't have the right. But can I just come over? To talk. Just for a minute. I didn't reply. Again. 2 days later, another one. I'm sorry. Things are bad. I messed up. I've got no one else. And this time, I felt something different. Not anger. Not pity. Just cold. Calm and clear. I didn't want to know what had happened to her. I didn't want to be the one people come to when no one else picks up. I'm not a rescuer. Not a shoulder. Not a backup plan. But something stirred curiosity. I messaged an old mutual friend. He didn't seem surprised. You didn't hear? He said. She got deep into stuff. Started with weed, then moved on. Nobody will hire her. She's crashing on someone's couch. Borrowed money from everyone. Way too late now, man. I read it. Twice. 3 times. My chest tightened, not from guilt, but from the realization of how far someone can fall. She was a different person now. The one I knew didn't exist anymore. Only pieces remained. And suddenly, I realized I never really knew her. Or maybe I just didn't want to see. A few days later, another message from her. This time it was long. Rambling. She wrote that nothing worked out. That she made mistakes. That the other guy turned out to be the wrong one. That her friends vanished. That everything collapsed. That she dreamt of us being together again. I read it to the end. Then typed out a reply. Direct. Harsh. No sugarcoating. I'm sorry your life's like this. But I'm not your exit. Don't come. Don't write. This isn't your place anymore. Sent it. Blocked her. Sat down in my chair and stared ahead. No euphoria. No anger. Just peace. Like after a long walk, when you finally get home, take your shoes off, and the air in the room feels still and right. I didn't think about her after that. Not because she was awful. But because I was no longer in that story. This wasn't my book anymore. Not my chapter. And not my responsibility. Later that evening, I painted one of the last parts of the frigate. Set the mast. Aligned the sails. It came out clean. No extras. No flair. Just a ship that had made it through a storm. I placed it on the shelf. Looked at it. Smiled. And turned off the light. AITA for refusing to support my ex when things truly fell apart for her? Or after everything that happened, was I right to close the door and keep living my life? The end.